I paid for a storage unit in Oregon for 2 years after I moved to Mexico. And it turned out to be the most expensive mistake I made when it comes to moving to Mexico. If you're considering moving to Mexico or really anywhere, I'm sure you've heard both sides of the aisle. Some people say they'd never leave their favorite things behind, family heirlooms, baby pictures, whatever it is. And other people say that you should just get rid of everything and buy what you need when you get to your location. Well, I've started over many times, and each time I've had to rebuild my life from scratch. When it comes to the physical things of living, you need a bed, you need kitchen stuff. So when I decided to move to Mexico, I told myself I was being smart. I kept my favorite things in a storage unit in Oregon, and I felt like keeping those things would be better than replacing them. And it's not because I needed those things on a day-to-day basis, nor did I think I was ever going back to Oregon, at least I didn't want to. But I didn't know if I was going to be staying in Mexico. It was only 60 days from when I decided to move to Mexico until I took off on the road. So decisions had to be made quickly. And the truth is, I had started life over several times before, and I didn't want to come back to the States and have to rebuy all those things again. You can think about all the things that have meant something to you in your life, from your child's baby pictures to your favorite furniture, family heirlooms, gifts from friends, mementos from traveling or relationships. It's not nothing. So before I left, I did a quick calculation and I figured out with the monthly storage fees how long it would take for me to feel like it was worth it. In other words, if I paid for 2 years or 3 years, would it really be worth it for those things that I kept? And for me, it turned out to be about 2.5 years. Personally, I do better with systems rather than just emotions. And so that's why later I created what I call the Relocation Clarity Framework. It's a workbook to help you decide where to move and why you're moving. And it's really a way to get clear, because oftentimes moving countries, the obvious expenses are not the only ones. If you're interested in this workbook, see the notes below the video. So I felt like that little storage room in Oregon was like a security blanket with a monthly fee. I didn't know if Mexico would be permanent, and I never wanted to go back to Oregon. I just never wanted to buy all those things again. But leaving them there felt like an unfinished departure for me. I didn't want to discard all those things that felt important to me and maybe even my family, and I certainly couldn't put them in the car with me. So it's been kind of hanging over me for the last 2 years, paying the monthly fee, which by the way went up 2 months after I moved into that little storage unit. Always knowing in the back of my mind that I would have to do something about it, of course. What made me know that now is the time for making a decision was that I bought this house. I'm waiting for my real estate agent to come with the keys, and then I'll be in my house for the first time. And there was no more time for indecision or procrastination. It was time to do something about that storage unit in Oregon. And I haven't set foot in Oregon since I left that day in March of 2024. My family lives mostly in California, so when I go back to the States, that's where I go. So I had to end the storage situation one way or another. What I didn't consider or know at the time of moving here was how expensive it would be to, not just the storage fees, but actually moving those things from the United States to Mexico. I had no idea it was that expensive. And if you look into it, you'll see what I mean. I talked to several companies, and the prices they quoted me just absolutely took my breath away. So what? Sell the stuff? That would mean going back to Oregon, getting a hotel and a rental car and dealing with all that selling? Or give it away? Abandon it? And there was something else. Someone in my family had abandoned all our family possessions at a certain point in my adult life, and it just felt like disrespect. It felt like neglect. It wasn't the loss of objects. It was the feeling that our history had been treated as something that was just disposable. It really left an imprint. So when I got to my own storage dilemma, I didn't want to repeat that pattern. Well, eventually the bill comes due, and it's not just financial. What I know now is that you can't really half move. You can't move to a different country and sort of hedge your bets by leaving half your life in the place that you left. Or you can, but it'll cost you dearly. Keeping a storage unit doesn't just keep your things, it's a holding place for decisions. And 2 years later, I had to face my own decisions. Everyone talks about the cost of living in Mexico, but no one talks about the cost of not fully leaving wherever you came from. I kept a storage unit in Oregon just in case. It seemed practical and responsible. The mistake wasn't keeping it. The mistake was not thinking through the full cost and timeline of resolving it. The mistake wasn't loving my things. It was postponing the real decision. Not only was there the monthly fee, but there would be the cost of dealing with it, no matter what I decided to do eventually with the things in it. In the end, the storage unit kind of represented a version of my life I never wanted to go back to, and the best things in my past, and a safety net that was also a leash. So when I finally decided what to do with it, something shifted in me. Commitment and freedom at the same time. Commitment to my life here in Mexico, and freedom from the nagging bills and indecision of the storage unit. I stopped preparing for failure and having to go back when I didn't want to, and at the same time accepted that I was willing to do what it would take financially to get my things here, whether that's objectively rational or not. So I found a small company that would move my things from Oregon to here in Mexico, and the best thing about them was that they could do it without me even being there. In other words, I didn't have to go to Oregon to sort through all that stuff and pack it into a truck. I didn't have to drive it down, obviously, and I didn't have to get it through customs at the border. I decided to go for it. They cut the lock off the door without me, and just not having to go back to Oregon was huge for me emotionally, not to mention physically and financially. The saga of the Oregon delivery is almost done. Apparently the truck is right down the street, so I'm gonna go out to the road so I can direct them in on this bumpy dirt road. I hope they make it. I hope they make it with that big truck. All of this for some things I probably shouldn't have kept, but you can't replace certain things, and I'll be glad to have my stuff around me. All those years of collecting traveling souvenirs and old relationships and baby pictures, and so yeah, it's just money. I've just spent money and it's been a headache, but it's done now. At least I hope they're down the street, arriving any minute. Do the dogs remember the smell of Oregon in our house full of all these things? 𝐕𝐤𝐬𝐿 was only 7 months old when we left. It's a strange thing, stuff. On some level, I feel like if I show all my stuff, you'll see more of who I really am, who I've been. Not having all this stuff made me feel like I had more privacy. There was a time in my life when I felt like the most kind of evolved thing to do was be able to walk away from everything and restart your life wherever you end up. And I still believe that to a degree. But what I understand now is that it's not a weakness to value the physical artifacts of your life. They don't define you, but they can tell a story of who you've been. And when you're building a brand new life in a place you've never been before, or having some of those things around you can feel really gratifying and comforting. I thought detachment meant discarding things, but what I understand now is that it's more about choosing really deliberately. If I had to do it over again, I wouldn't keep a storage unit and I wouldn't ship half a house full of furniture. I would choose my favorite cabinet, a contained space, and in it, the pieces that truly mattered to me, and I'd leave it with my son, and that's it. Not as a hedge, just as a keepsake. I would keep one small intentional container of what matters to me. I didn't need to preserve my entire former life. I just needed to preserve what was irreplaceable. That is the only piece of furniture I really wanted. Moving countries is expensive, but unfinished departures can be way more expensive. And if you're specifically considering Mexico, I made a Moving to Mexico guide to help you figure out if you're willing to commit before you actually commit. If you're considering keeping a storage unit when you move, don't just consider the monthly fee, consider all the things that go along after that. Calculate the cost of resolving it later, financially, logistically, emotionally. Just going back to Oregon to sort through things and get rid of them, it's not something I wanted to do ever. It's not the storage fees that get you, it's the cost and the pain of moving it later. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who messaged me or sent an email to check on me and the dogs after recent events in Mexico. We are really fine here and truly appreciate your concern. Thank you.